Dr. Sebi.
Yo, Donnie. Dr. Phillips back in the nice house. Good to see you, my friend.
Back in that nice house.
Yeah. On summer solstice, I believe.
Summer solstice.
Or is that tomorrow?
The 20th.
Yeah, something
20th.
I think it's
21st. 21st.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. Yeah. Got my dates wrong, man. Yeah. Is this a weekday?
It is a Thursday.
It's a Thursday.
June 20th. Do we usually reveal this kind of stuff?
Nah.
Because this will probably be released in December.
December or January. Yes, might be our new
2025, 2026.
Yeah, we came out hard last year with what, like grief and...
Yeah. That was this year.
That was... I'm already speaking as if we're in next year.
So the questions I've gotten from you so far are, is it a weekday? Is it the solstice? And remember when we did grief last year?
Yeah.
You
not
okay?
oriented to space and time. I'm all right, man.
It sounds like it.
Feeling very clear on where I am.
Linear.
Yeah. I do know I'm in the nice house, though.
You're going to have a little problem with the nerdy part of the quick and nerdy today.
Yeah, this might be quick. Maybe not, though. Who knows?
Long, yeah. Long and non-nerdy?
Long and non-nerdy, man. Oh, sorry about me.
Sorry about you. Sorry you're feeling that way.
Hey, it's all good. We'll see how things go, though.
Yeah. Hey, did you see Kendrick had that pop-out show last night? Yeah. Kind of lighting Drake up again.
Oh, good. Okay. What happened?
He told Drake that he'd give him a little respect if Drake gave Tupac's ring back. You know, just that.
Just that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It made me think, I was like reviewing some of that, watching some of the footage, and it made me think, out of the two of us, who's Kendrick and who's Drake?
I think this feels leading. And I'm assuming that you're...
I feel like this is the best day to pursue this. I feel like...
I'm not in the space to make any argument that I'm cogent like Kendrick. More of a dummy like Drake.
Yeah, I think Drake's the one that's like, what year is it? Didn't I create that song last year?
Was that last year that I did that? Which year did I create that hit? Yeah.
Started from the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know that... I think I'd probably be like in that battle. I'd probably be a little more like J. Cole.
Oh yeah,
I think I would just say, "Sorry, my bad, guys. I see where this is going.
Slipped up.
I'm going to go ahead and exit the freeway now." Yeah, I think that would be me. Yeah. This is good stuff, man.
This is good stuff,
and it leads us right into what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah. So what do we got on the docket today?
Yeah, mostly just talking about how meditation changes the mind, brain, and body. So that's pretty evident, right? With Kendrick and Drake.
Oh yeah. How's that evident?
I don't know. It was a hard pivot, and I did my best. We're back to the long and dummy.
The long and non-nerdy.
Not nerdy. That's it.
The long and dummy. Although I do like long and dummy. Oh my goodness.
I think that's what lad. That's a lad.
The long and dummy.
It's a long and dummy.
Oh man.
For sure.
So talking about, say it again. What are we talking about?
How meditation changes the mind, brain, and body.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. I'm looking forward to this one. Although, like, quick disclaimer, I probably say this every time we cover these topics. We are going to like barely scratch the surface, I think, of the content today.
Of the depth of it.
Yeah, and all the people who are really involved in studying meditation and its effects on the brain, body, and mind. But we're mostly going to focus in on a couple people today.
So we're going to go over how meditation changes mind, brain, and body?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, where are we starting?
Well, we're going to start with a couple people. So Daniel Goleman and Richie Davidson.
Oh, yeah.
They have kind of a fun story, man. They met at Harvard of the East, Harvard University, and were friends in graduate college.
Yeah. And so they went to school, that's the namesake of Harvard of the West.
Harvard of the West, yeah. NAU, man.
Harvard of the East.
Harvard of the East, which is actually called Harvard. But they became friends and did a lot of research together. They took several meditation trips to Asia with the interest in learning more about practicing meditation at a deep level. And through their several trips, they actually became friends with the Dalai Lama.
Not bad.
Not too bad, yeah.
Not too bad.
It's kind of interesting. So, yeah, they developed a relationship with the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama was willing to undergo a series of tests and that sort of thing to see the degree to which meditation has had an effect on their brain.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
That's pretty, that's noteworthy to get the Dalai Lama to be your research subject to test neurobiological responses to meditation.
It really is, right?
Yeah. You've kind of earned some street cred or figured something out or done some good networking.
Done some good networking, to connect with the Dalai Lama. Yeah,
Daniel and Richie.
Good job, Daniel and Richie.
Good networkers.
Yeah, good at networking for sure. Yeah, for sure. So through their time, they took a particular interest in understanding how meditation affects the mind, brain, and body.
You and we addressed neuroplasticity early on when we did Quick and Nerdies, right?
Yeah, I think it was like our second or third episode, maybe?
Early on.
March 2020.
That was good stuff.
It was good stuff. Early, Dan, and nice.
I do say so myself. Anyhow, so they actually, a lot of neuroplasticity essentially is the mechanism by which things happen that they research. And so like, just to reintroduce that, are you okay if I reintroduce neuroplasticity?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So essentially neuroplasticity is defined as the capacity for chemical expression, brain structure, and brain function to change in response to extrinsic and intrinsic factors. And the key part of this that I think is so cool to emphasize is like, it makes sense that during meditation, chemical expression or maybe even brain function changes, but to know that both inside and outside of practiced ongoing meditation, the actual structures in the brain can be altered, or of mindfulness awareness, the structures in the brain and the chemical expression and brain function can be altered.
Yeah, exactly. And so that informed their whole, basically their whole path of pursuing studies to understand the effect. Was that, okay, we're learning that the brain can change in response to experience. And so if we were to practice these experiences, how would it affect the brain? And so that underlies, again, their interest. And so they set out to define and understand that effect.
Yeah. What'd they find?
Well, all kinds of good stuff, really. They first, they talk about their interest is particularly lying in what is referred to as level 1 meditation or level 2 meditation. And so they talk about there's a deep path and there's a wide path. There are 5 levels of meditation. The deep path really is represented by the first level, as they refer to it, which is just like pure form is practiced in like ancient lineages of Theravada Buddhism in Southeast Asia or among Tibetan yogis. These are like people who are like capable of meditating for days on end sort of thing. And then that would be the first level. And then they also define the wide path, which is level 2 through level 5. In the wide path, the second level essentially are traditions which have been removed from part of the total lifestyle, leaving behind parts of the original Asian sources and become more palatable for the West. So there might not be quite as much of the spiritual renderings and that sort of thing. Level 3 is a further removal of the meditation practices out of their spiritual context and are distributed more widely in contexts such as mindfulness-based stress reduction or transcendental meditations, which offers mantras to the modern world, but in a more user-friendly format.
Yeah, it's kind of like watering it down, but it creates a wider path, more accessibility, larger dissemination.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think of something like mindfulness-based stress reduction. We referred to Jon Kabat-Zinn a lot. And so that's actually like kind of like a manualized or kind of like a...
formulaic?
Yeah, it's a formulaic approach to a mindfulness-based therapy in a sense. The fourth level would be widely accessible forms of meditation, which are, again, mostly watered down, but make them handy for the largest amount of people. These are kind of like those mindfulness at your desk reminders, minutes-long meditation apps, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think of something like Headspace or something like Calm or those kinds of things. You might get those little reminders about mindfulness.
Yeah.
Quips and that sort of thing.
Which kind of is a paradox to me because you're getting a reminder to pay attention. Anyhow.
Yeah. Sometimes that's where you got to start, right?
Yeah. Level 5.
And then level 5, which is emerging and just might be the most simple version of level 4. And these are kinds of like bits and pieces of mindfulness. They're really found in places like schools, elementary grades, that kind of thing. Might be stress management skills. I remember like with my daughters, they just finished 3rd grade, right? And they shared with me a mindfulness practice they learned about the roller coaster where you trace your fingers, and breathe in, breathe out as you go in and up or up and down each finger and that sort of thing. That would be something that would fall under like level 5. Okay. So those are the 5 levels of meditation. Again, the first level represents the deep path. Level 2 through 5 represents a more widely accessible path. And then in Richie and Daniel's work, they were most interested in understanding the effects of level 1 and level 2.
Yeah.
But again, we're willing to also look at practices that fell under level 3 and level 4 as well.
Yeah. And so levels 2 through 5 also, there's kind of a qualitative element of depth as well, even though it's considered all part of the wide path. Level 2 is a little bit more involved, engaged, and deeper than level 5.
Yeah. Correct.
Am I remembering right? Like these guys also address like an ethic or an ethic to mindfulness generally that says if any aspect of meditation alleviates suffering, it ought to be offered to all, not just those in spiritual search.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I think it's easy to kind of look at the 5 levels and think like, well, level 1's the deepest form and probably the most pure and most true in that way. And then it would be easy to dismiss maybe level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And I think that ethic is important, as it says, if it does anything in terms of alleviating suffering, then it should be offered to all. So even if people find maybe alleviation of suffering or a point of connection in like something like level 5, it should be done.
The other end of the spectrum is like, the literature on mindfulness and
The total like watering down of it.
Watered down and over dissemination of mindfulness.
Yeah, totally.
Which dilutes it to a degree, but it's a balance of those. Essentially, that if it does alleviate suffering, then it's still good. Maybe being mindful of what it is you're looking to alleviate is also helpful as well, though.
Right. Am I just alleviating that suffering so I can get back to the capital grind?
Yeah. Anyhow, that's for another day. Huh?
That's for another day.
Yeah. So then essentially with meditation and mindfulness, a lot of this became in vogue throughout the 70s, but it even grew exponentially in like the 2010s, right?
Yeah, this is where I think like the mindfulness stuff really became more popular through the 2010s. And there was a lot of things like I think electronics, technology has really opened up an avenue for mindfulness to become more accessible.
And to become a product of it. So what you mean by that, because we're throwing that term around commonly now, is like you're saying in the 2010s, there were a lot of avenues for people to pursue like guided meditation exercises that would fit under mindfulness, whether that's on YouTube maybe early on and now on specific unnumbered amount of apps. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah, totally. So historically, you might have had to go meet with a community of people to access guided meditations and that sort of thing. But then it became available through your phone and you could do this thing in your own practice in that kind of way, or reading scripts or books. And so with that explosion in technology, I think the research also then became interested in understanding the effect of it, with a lot more people taking an interest in practicing mindfulness, practicing meditation, and having accessibility to it. So there were some studies, just not a lot in the 70s. And it's kind of like a hockey stick curve, it was like through the 70s, 80s, and early 2000s, it kind of goes up a little bit, but then the 2010s, it takes like a steep incline. And the amount of studies it grew exponentially through that period of time.
Well, so then what did they learn or in their research, what can we know about these different levels or different opportunities for mindfulness and meditation?
Yeah, for sure. So they kind of start with this hypothesis and I think this is pretty cleverly worded, but they say that the after is the before for the next during. And so the thing they wanted to understand is that after a practice of meditation, how does it affect the next time you sit to meditate? So they define after as being the enduring changes from meditation that last long beyond the practice session itself.
Okay, so not like the high or the effect.
Correct.
During the process.
Correct. They were interested in the after part, and that is more associated with the neuroplasticity aspect of it. Is how do these things change over the course of time? Before they define as the condition we were at in baseline before meditating. And then during is what happens as we meditate. And that could be temporary changes in our state that pass when we stop meditating. So just like you said, they're less interested in understanding maybe the experience of meditation itself or the effect.
This is cool because I get questions about like, oh, what happens during meditation? Or people ask about like, what's the effect or influence? Or sometimes people talk about breath work, which is a very basic, simple kind of form of mindfulness if you can bring your attention to your breathing. Right. People will ask, well, like, what happens? Or people often say to me, like, oh, I was surprised at how much of an effect it had. Yeah. Following a specific exercise. And in that exercise is more than just actually breathing air in and out. It's actually being aware of what your thinking is doing, and then being intentional in your orientation with your thinking.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking of the flip side of that coin, like you're saying, is that people will often also say something to the effect of like, I'm not good at meditating, and the framework will inform that. And largely meditation is really just about training attention. Someone is trying to achieve something during meditation, and will kind of drive you away from that point. Or someone will say, I'm not good at meditating because I get distracted. It's kind of like, well, that's what the brain does. Yeah. And so largely the purpose is to train attention so you can become aware when you're distracted. So they, in their book, Altered Traits, Daniel and Richie, they go through a lot. They talk about a whole bunch of different effects that meditation has on the brain, a lot of different ways and studies that they produced. I thought for just our own palatability and the sake of living up to the cue and quick and nerdy, we'll cover 3. And so the first we'll cover is the default mode network, which often is referred to as the DMN, the demon.
Yeah, the DMN, you know, the DMN.
The DMN.
Default mode network. So that's the first one we'll cover.
Yeah, that'll be the first one we'll cover. Second one we'll cover is actual attention control. And the third thing we'll cover is emotional regulation.
Ah, yeah.
Fun stuff, huh?
Yeah, I mean, first 2 very important. Last one,
Overrated.
Overrated,
they say.
Emotional regulation.
Yeah.
Come on.
If emotions don't exist, then why do you have to control them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's kind of that's my counter argument.
Yeah, I think emotions was the episode we did after neuroplasticity.
Coincidentally.
Somehow, huh? Strange.
So DMN.
Yeah. So let's jump into the default mode network. The default mode network is the medial frontoparietal network, which will sound like a alphabet soup to some folks. And so this incorporates a few different things. So the medial prefrontal cortex, kind of the middle front part of your brain, the posterior cingulate cortex, I'm not really sure how to say this, but the precuneus and the angular gyrus. So these different parts in the brain activate in a way which represents the default mode network. And so the default mode network is most active when we're at what is referred to as wakeful rest. Might just kind of refer to this as the mind wandering. And, in doing so, we tend to think about ourselves, maybe think about the past, plan for the future, but in a very not focused way.
Like passive, almost slightly daydreaming, but your mind's kind of just free flowing there. So like at like 2 p.m. in the afternoon when my mind's like, that Danish from Mazels.
Yeah. Either why did I do that, or I can't wait to do that.
Yeah.
Or should I do that? Something to that effect.
Yeah, mostly the first 2. Why did I do that, or I should do that?
Yeah, why did I do that, and I should do that again now. Yeah. Yeah, that Danish from Moselles might take up a lot of the default mode network.
in mine.
Yeah.
In my brain.
For sure. But it's just kind of those like comings and goings of thoughts, right? It's kind of like thinking about things at random, no real focus. Might be kind of like, I can't forget to go to the grocery store later. I got to do this. It could also be, sometimes it's pretty highly correlated with a feeling of anxiety. And sometimes it tends to activate and wander to what's troubling for us. And so we can kind of get stuck in a ruminative period with it. So again, without something to focus on, the default mode network is the thing that is most active in our brain. Daniel, Richie, right? They were set out to understand the effect of meditation on the default mode network.
Yeah, what did they find out?
So findings were that meditation increases the connection between the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the default mode network.
Okay, yeah. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Dorsolateral, so kind of like on the top side part of the front part of your brain. I always tell people kind of like where your eyeball is, sort of your temple, go in the brain a little bit from there. And that what they found was with the people level 1 type meditators, that connection was found to be way stronger.
Yeah.
Like really, really strong.
Yeah. So then what are the implications of that? So if that network can be visibly shown through imaging to be stronger, what does that mean?
Yeah, essentially, so when the prefrontal cortex is stronger in its connection to the default mode network, it acts in a way in which it inhibits the default mode network. So we get a lot less of that mind's chatter or monkey mind.
Yeah. So this is when people say to me like, hours went by and I didn't know exactly what I was doing, or I'm having a hard time focusing. I'm kind of just like passively going throughout my day or the emotions. This could be part of it, is that it's hard to get the DMN off board.
Yeah. So if we were to look at an image, it would be like the DMN would be activating strongly, and the prefrontal cortex would not be doing much.
Engaged much. Yeah. And so people that meditated frequently was shown to have a stronger connection, which means like the prefrontal cortex can be like, okay, stop thinking about the Danish.
Yeah.
Get your notes done.
Yeah, the prefrontal cortex will sort of direct that a little bit. Yeah. So there's less noise from the default mode network, essentially. And that's really important, right? Because then if we were stuck less in monkey mind or in the mind's chatter, we're less consumed by it also. And there's also parts of meditation practice which train that thing. So there will be directives like allow for your mind to wander. So activate the default mode network, do that for a given period of time, and then choose to refocus the attention on something specific. And then that's then activating the prefrontal cortex. And then so you're practicing that thing.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? The reason that network is shown to be stronger. So you're talking about literally the structure looks different in people that meditate versus people that don't meditate. The actual physical thing that exists biologically is visibly bigger. And the reason is because you're kind of repeatedly exercising that thing.
Exactly.
So like when I go, lift all those heavy weights.
You lift, bro?
Yeah. Do
you even lift, bro?
Do you need to ask?
Good question.
I mean, look at these.
Yeah.
Some people call them spaghetti arms. I call them big spaghetti arms.
Big spaghetti arms. Yeah, you got those BSAs, no doubt. You got those big spaghetti arms.
Which some people think stands for Boy Scouts of America, but no, big spaghetti arms.
Big spaghetti arms in the Phillips house, man. This dude walking around BSA all day.
So essentially the network is a lot stronger. It's a lot, the prefrontal cortex is then able to engage and say, hey, the DMN's on board. Let's come back to intentionality, what we want our focus and attention on.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's strengthened through repetition, essentially. And so for people who are interested in meditating or might think again, like, oh, I'm not good at meditating because my mind wanders, I'll often tell people that that's part of it. Let your mind wander and celebrate the moment you become aware that your mind is wandering, because that's the moment the prefrontal cortex kicks in. And that's the thing we're trying to train. So that's the first thing that they took an interest in learning one of the things that they took an interest in learning was how does meditation affect the default mode network?
Yeah.
And like I was saying earlier, meditation mostly focuses in on attention. Like there's some component of attentional control in it. And so that leads us to the second thing, and they wanted to understand, and we're just going to cover a little bit of this, but how does meditation affect attention control? Because it's the literal practice of it. They start off one of their chapters, all right, if I read this anecdote here.
Yeah.
Or this story. So they say, one day a student asked his Zen teacher to create a brushstroke calligraphy for him, saying something of great wisdom. And the Zen master, without hesitating, took up his brush and wrote attention. His student was a bit dismayed and asked, is that all? Without a word, the master took to his brush again and wrote attention. Attention. His student, feeling that was not so profound, got a bit irritated, complaining to the master there was nothing so wise about that. Again, the master responded in silence, writing attention, attention, attention. Frustrated, the student demanded to know what he meant by the word attention, to which the master replied, attention means attention. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super happy with that. Very wise.
It was exactly what he was looking for, right? So something of great wisdom. And so, I think the idea there is that attention means attention, and it's sort of the thing that allows for us to experience. So they were interested in understanding, again, how does meditation affect attention? Attention is largely associated with the front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. I always tell people it's kind of that like jello behind your eyebrows. And there are executive functions associated with attention, which we refer to as activation, focus, effort, emotion, memory, and action. And without attention, none of those are necessarily possible.
Yeah.
Attention is the thing that allows for those.
So the first thing you addressed was the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the DMN that are shown to be stronger or bigger. And then that takes us directly into that attention when you're talking about those executive functions.
Yeah, exactly.
And so people talk about selecting attention. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, this is super interesting to me. It's really fun to read about, learn about. So selecting attention is the capacity for us to essentially focus on one element or choose to attend to one element and ignore others. This might feel familiar, but there's the old cocktail party effect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's the idea that we can be in an environment where there's a lot of different stimulus happening. You're probably familiar with this kind of thing. Lots of partying. You might hear the clinking of glasses.
Oh, yeah.
Wassails.
Danish
is just being
Danish is here, there, everywhere.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Mostly what I'm aware of in situations like this is, who's talking to who, what the conversation topics are, what networks are being made.
Totally.
Yeah.
This goes back into like our first episode. This is like Dan and his Enneagram 5.
Oh yeah, man. Just observing. So lots of stimuli going on. Lots of opportunity for how, like, attention is obviously, it's a finite resource, right? And so which conversation do you select?
Yeah, exactly. And that whole time our brain is taking in information, and essentially it filters out irrelevant information, and then we tend to respond to relevant information. So if you're in that environment, I were to say something like Dan, your attention would then focus or switch to something like Dan.
Come over.
Yeah. And so that would be selective attention, is that we tend to respond to that which is relevant and then filter out that which is irrelevant. And you can practice selecting your attention, essentially.
Okay.
Selectively attending to that which is relevant and important to you. So they did a bunch of studies on this one. This actually goes all the way back to Ritchie's dissertation. This is kind of a fun one, but they asked participants essentially to pay attention to a visual stimulus. So they would flashlight, and then they would have like a wristband sort of thing on that would vibrate on the wrist, and they were instructed to ignore the vibration on the wrist. And so essentially what they found there was that meditators showed a slight increase in cortical connectivity, which meant there was more activities in the brain, in the areas of the brain that they would have anticipated. So by paying attention visually to those areas of the brain, were responding in a way that they would have anticipated, particularly when it was juxtaposed against the tactile cortex.
Yeah, the vibration.
Right. So
essentially, they could show in studies, they could show that the brain activity corresponding with like the sense of vision was higher in those that meditated when they were asked to focus on the light rather than the vibration, versus those who didn't meditate. It was more difficult for them to direct or select their attention towards the visual focus.
To select that thing. Right.
Differentiated from the tactile focus of the vibration.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so an interesting finding with this, or maybe really just an interesting implication, was that when we choose to concentrate on one thing but ignore another, it's not that we're necessarily amplifying the thing that we're concentrating on, but it's essentially we're reducing the noise associated with the thing we're choosing to ignore. But less noise means more signal. And so they're saying it's not necessarily the vision is the thing that's amplifying, it's that we're not paying attention to the other vibration. Stuff. Yeah. And so again, for folks that were meditating, they showed a greater ability to selectively attend to that which was relevant, or that which they were instructed to respond to.
Yeah. So then how does this play out in the real life context then? Like what that implication, what does that have in day-to-day living?
Yeah. So I think this is a really important question that you asked. So think of the default mode network.
Yeah.
And if we kind of go through the world in the default mode network, we're just sort of responding to that in a passive sort of way.
To that low level desire that exists there, kind of bouncing off the walls with that.
Right. But if we can clarify for ourselves that which is important and then pay attention to those things, or know when those things are happening around us, we can essentially give ourselves a choice in what we're responding to.
And then select what to pay attention to, and then move with intention.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's why I would say that this is an important thing to be aware of.
So then, these things, I love this, like exploring the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the default mode network, and attention control, the ability to actually see in the prefrontal cortex how people can selectively attune to something versus not. Super deep. So emotion regulation.
We don't need it.
Well, I think you can just simply say like,
Yeah.
I have a new saying in 2024. I've been applying.
Yeah.
Suppress to success.
Suppress to success. Suppress to success. Say it with us, folks. Suppress to success. Now I'd like for you to close your eyes and imagine yourself suppressing that which exists, whatever it may be, all the way to the finish line. Success.
Success. The finish line equals success.
You did it. All right, now give yourself a pat on the back.
Okay. So the third one they looked at that we're going to talk about is basically how those that meditate.
Yeah.
It's also demonstrated all that change to brain structure, brain function, chemical responses shows up for emotional regulation.
Emotional regulation as well.
Dang.
Yeah. All this stuff is connected. It's super interesting. And this can be, I forgot to mention this with the selective attention stuff, but as little as 30 hours of mindfulness-based stress reduction, they found differences with. Mm-hmm. So people who were doing 30 hours of MBSR.
Over time, not in
a row.
2 days.
Yeah, correct. So I don't know what the frequency or the duration was or the interval, but 30 total hours of mindfulness-based stress reduction, they found differences in people's ability to selectively attend to relevant information.
Yeah. So essentially, if I did 1 hour a week over 30 weeks, there would be demonstrable differences in my brain imaging.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And then if you compare that to some of the folks in like the level 1, there would be like a huge difference.
Oh, yeah. Big gap.
Big difference, yeah. So to jump back to the emotional regulation stuff and just saying that all this is really interesting, emotion regulation structurally or from a network standpoint in the brain is mostly associated with the amygdala, which is found in the limbic system, and then the nucleus accumbens. And so what we find essentially is if we've experienced powerful emotions, anger, anxiety, those kinds of things, we'll find typically strong activity in the amygdala.
Yeah, and the medulla oblongata.
Yeah, the medulla oblongata. The water boy?
Yeah.
So we'll find strong association or strong activity in the medulla oblongata.
Yeah. The limbic system, that's a fascinating thing as well.
Yeah, it really is. And so emotion regulation, just to provide a quick definition, is the ability to respond to the demands of experience with the range of emotions in a way that is sufficiently flexible to permit spontaneous reactions, as well as the ability to delay or inhibit spontaneous reactions.
Yeah. Can I see if I'm following you here? Because this is key, right? It's really a balance to strike. It's like, because sometimes people view, even sometimes stoicism can be described this way, as it's like the absence of emotion or this flatness, which in actuality may resemble something more like repression or suppression.
Yeah.
But this is saying that essentially emotional regulation can occur where an individual is in touch with, aware of, and can acknowledge emotions that occur, pleasant and unpleasant, but that those emotions then aren't disproportionate to the current trigger.
Voila. Yeah, well said. Yeah, think of matching the emotional response to maybe the situation itself or the contextual demands. Yeah, and it would be flexible in that way. So it could allow for spontaneous bursts of emotion that match the situation, but then also can inhibit that might not proportionally match.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to learn, huh?
Good thing to learn.
Good thing to learn.
So, what did they study here and what did they find?
This is another one where there's so many studies that they conducted around this and reviewed in this as well. And this one, they looked at comparing long-term meditators, and they qualified this as people with 7,000 plus hours of meditation.
Yeah.
That's a long time. To short-term meditation, 1,500 hours. And then again, to some who had done even as low as 30 hours of mindfulness-based stress reduction, to some who did no meditation at all. And essentially what they were doing was measuring brain activities in the regions I mentioned earlier after viewing a variety of images, some that were really distressing, like viewing a burn victim, something like that. Yeah, it'd be really tough to see.
Yeah.
And then really not distressing images like bunnies.
Oh, yeah, seeing that little white-tailed bunny.
No, a little white-tailed bunny, that's going to create some warm fuzzies internally.
Warm fuzzies.
Yeah, for sure.
What'd they find?
Well, yeah, again, so what they found was that overall, there was a dampening of activity in the amygdala in meditators. And again, they found a very small effect even in people who had only done meditation for 30 hours. And there was a large effect in people who had done long-term meditation. And what they found, again, this is similar to the attention stuff and the DMN stuff, but there was a strengthened connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I think the same idea with the default mode network is present here with emotional regulation. Distressing images, lots of amygdala activity. Meditation, distressing images, less amygdala activity, more prefrontal cortex activity. And so I think you see the way in which the prefrontal cortex, again, acts as like a moderator or a regulator of activity in other regions of the brain.
Well, that's powerful stuff. So then how does this play out? Like, what's the implication here, and how is that viewed in real life circumstances?
It's got to take me to a movie I recently saw.
Oh.
No, should we do a spoiler alert?
I don't know. We did get lit up for not doing a spoiler alert about Ted Lasso a couple years ago.
Yeah. I think that was because we were like revealing the plot and stuff that had happened before people had actually seen it.
Isn't that what a spoiler alert is?
Yeah. So I'm wondering if we should do one, but I don't know that we're necessarily going to talk about the plot of Inside Out.
Yeah.
Just more of a reference from
Inside Out 2.
Inside Out 2.
So I heard you say Inside Out. Inside Out 2, I'm assuming. So we're not talking about the plot, although we're going to talk about...
we're just going to reveal the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that, we'll be talking about a major scene that like conveys basically the culmination of the plot.
I guess so. So listen if you want.
Let's go the spoiler alert route. I guess I was saying this much. If you continue to listen and you're disappointed, that's on you.
That's on you at this point for sure. So you're asking like, what does this look like in real life, right? And took my daughters and Fam Bam to go see Inside Out 2 the other night. And there's a scene, right, where the main character, Riley, is in a penalty box of a hockey game. Mm-hmm. And she's experiencing this extreme distress associated with anxiety.
Yeah. I went and saw it too. She's like shaking, twitching, sweating.
Yeah, it kind of looks like panic.
Yeah, panicked.
Yeah. And there's this images of internally what's going on with her and the emotion of anxiety, and it's like spinning, swirling super fast, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see her responding to all that. Her behavior was largely driven by these core beliefs too, right? Mm-hmm. And this is all happening non-consciously for her, is how I'd frame that.
Yeah, she's not selecting where attention is going right now. She's she's dysregulated in that the emotion of feeling like embarrassed, upset, shame, guilt, and anger is driving all of these thoughts that lead to these beliefs about who she is or what's going to be available to her in the future. Voila.
Right. And so that's happening non-consciously, and it kind of results in this thing that happens for her where she's like in this panic space. And so the implication of the findings from these meditation studies essentially would be is that Riley is kind of going through that way in which she's missing awareness of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And so if she were to have, I'm not saying this is like one for one, but the practice of meditation would help her activate the prefrontal cortex in that emotional state, which would allow for her to bring awareness to what's happening within. Mm-hmm. So one, the emotion itself, like the anxiety, the fear, everything that's driving her in that moment would be less, but then also there would be something that's moderating that, tuning in, saying like, okay, here's what's going on with me. I'm feeling this thing. Here are the beliefs at play. What actions do I have with this, or what choices do I have?
Yeah. So it's not saying that inherently she wouldn't be experiencing those emotions. But if we were comparing two Rileys, one that participates in regular meditation, one that doesn't, the way that her traits would then be different and viewable through imaging would be that she may be able to recognize and label the emotions and then distinguish those and decide upon like a proportionate response versus just being kind of dysregulated and reactive.
Right. In a space that's dysregulated. Yeah. Very well said. And so that would be the thing that they would demonstrate through meditation studies is that, again, that prefrontal cortex and choosing to activate that on purpose with intention has pretty profound effects in how it responds to or works with the default mode network, how it works with the emotional network, essentially the amygdala and nucleus accumbens. Yeah.
Nice.
So there's a lot more in that book. Again, that's just 3 things that we covered. I thought 3 of the more interesting things.
Altered Traits by Daniel and Richie.
Daniel and Richie.
Daniel Goleman and Richie Davidson.
Yeah.
Daniel Goleman known for EI, but I actually like this work more.
Yeah. This is some good stuff.
Yeah.
Because it does just a little bit with emotions, much less.
Yeah. So to summarize then, essentially what is shown is that those who participate in mindfulness awareness and meditation over time are visibly shown to be able to shut down the default mode network, kind of just the primal low-level drive, easier. They're able to select attention easier, so drive their own focus and be intentional with that. And they're able to regulate emotion better.
Yep. That's just a few of the things, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And so, those are 3 out of much more that's in that book and that they researched and explored.
Yeah, exactly. So super fun stuff. And we encourage people to go learn more about their work and about their findings of meditation. And again, there seems to be a dose-dependent effect with it. So the people that meditate more, practice more, have more activation in the prefrontal cortex that does the things that you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And for people who are just getting into it, even the more that you practice and the more that you practice, there will be an effect with that as well.
So then, what's the conclusions? How do we wrap it up?
Man, well, it brings me back to the quote at the beginning where you're talking about just kind of the ethic and the idea that if it helps a person alleviate suffering in their life, that it ought to be offered to all. And I think of meditation as being a free practice that anyone can do. And there are a variety of ways to do that. Again, 5 different levels, deep path, wide path. And that if it is something that can help alleviate suffering, it's been demonstrated in the literature. I mean, it's growing body of literature, but it's been demonstrated for the most part that the brain responds to meditation in a very positive way that would help people make choices to alleviate suffering in their lives.
Mm-hmm. So not bad. So take advantage of this thing that's free and accessible?
I think so. Developing your own capacity to work with your mind and your experience in a way with intention and purpose. Yeah.
And I think we addressed this before when we addressed mindfulness generally. Mindfulness is awareness of the present moment with acceptance for what is. Mm-hmm. I again think those terms often get conflated. Meditation and mindfulness, that they are one and the same. And meditation is a more specific form of mindfulness, but mindfulness is that awareness, like not having the DMN driving everything anyways.
Correct. Yeah. So your ability to, that's another thing that I guess we didn't cover, but meta awareness. Yeah. Your ability to basically observe your experience or kind of observe the comings and goings of your own internal world, Yeah. Meditation helps with that.
Well, much appreciated. Even going over the emotion stuff, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you had to grin and bear that section, but it wasn't too bad. Not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Chime in with your vote on who's Drake, Kendrick, and J. Cole. Who's Danny and who's Richie. This has been a pleasure, huh?
Yeah. Take us out by shouting us out.
No doubt. You can always find us on the interwebs. We are at beyondflag.com, flag spelled
FLG.
And you can hit us up on Instagram, beyond_flag. And I feel like there's some other stuff, but no?
I think it's good for us just to drop referencing X.
X, yeah, that's what it's called, yeah.
But let's just let go of that.
This is our last time referencing X, and we're not even going to reference it.
Take care.
Love you.
Remember that whole thing last month when I performed?
Sorry
Slipped
about that.
out.
Yeah, said some stuff. My bad, guys.
That's on me.
I'm also curious to see where this goes, but I just want to kind of remove my name.
Do you think J. Cole's sitting back watching with curiosity?
I think gratitude. Yeah.
Gratitude.
Like relief, maybe?
Non-striving.
Non-striving. Yeah. All the mindfulness principles. J. Cole, feeling really good about what he's done so far.
Yeah.
And just thinking like, I made the right choice.
Yeah. In hindsight.
Are really aligned with Kendrick.
Dude's chopping up the rap battle 3 months after it happened.
Oh, yeah.